best slate for Yahoo this week. Alex, what's happening?
Not much, man. Excited after last night's Jacksonville versus Tennessee to have some better matchups to talk about. So
Whoa,
this should be a good week.
the G Money Gardner Minshew storyline wasn't doing it for you.
I have to admit that will be awesome in week 4 whenever all of a sudden everyone is playing Gardner Minshew and stacking him up with like DJ Chark and stuff because I'm pretty sure that was what's the expression catching lightning in a bottle or something?
Oh, I'm a believer, man. I'm all in
Uh,
on Minshew this year.
all
Jags
right.
Jags are going to win the division.
Well, one of us is going to take down the baller next week with Minshew, but unfortunately not in the player pool this week.
Damn it. Yeah, that was an interesting game. Pretty tough to watch in places. Jags offensive line not looking so hot right now. I'm not super confident about my Leonard Fournette love this year, but we'll see how that goes. It's still early.
Yeah, I think that Fournette, I mean, he's been getting like crazy workload. It's even more than Todd Gurley last year at the start of the year. So he could pay off over the course of a season here.
I like it. Well, let's just talk a little bit about our sponsor. It's Yahoo Fantasy. If you're from Canada, you can now play on Yahoo. You can play Yahoo DFS, which is great because it's really cool. So they've got the $1 million baller, or sorry, the $500K baller this week. It's only 55,000 people in the tournament, which is great. $10 entry fee, so you can get in twice as many tickets from some of those other pools. As well, they've still got the Yahoo Cup going on. It's round 3, looking for that $1 million perfect lineup that they're giving out. So you can enter that for free. They got a number of different tournaments on there. There's a House of Highlights free roll with 1K to first, sponsored by SeatGeek. So there's loads of stuff going on in over on Yahoo. Make sure to check them out. You never know if there's going to be overlay as well. So every time that there's a chance there's overlay, that's one of the spots I head to first. And there's no sense not playing there if you that should be the first spot you go if you're thinking about trying to get an advantage on that bankroll out there. Hey, Alex.
Yeah, I think that overlay is nice, but what's even more important is who you're playing against. And Yahoo, I mean, they bring in all these guys from season long to participate in their Yahoo Cup. So they really have a mechanism to get people to come to daily fantasy to try it for the first time. And since we're all vets, I think we might have an advantage over these folks.
Absolutely, yeah. I my very first tournament a couple weeks ago, I placed 25th in the $1 million baller. So I am loving these Yahoo tournaments so far. It's my favorite site to play on right now. So let's. What we're going to do today is just kind of go over some of the higher total games, get your general thoughts on what you're doing with the lineups. We'll start out with the Chiefs in Baltimore. We're going to start off with a little recap, I guess, of last week's Yahoo and talk about that a little bit. And then later on in the show, we're going to build some lineups. We're going to build a cash game lineup using your rankings. We are going to build a GPP lineup using your rankings and just kind of go through some of these bargains that you have in your Yahoo rankings on the site. Do you have any general thoughts about how last week went down on Yahoo? Anything stand out to you?
Man, I already forgot, but one thought I did have is we've seen like some interesting performances from guys who I typically advise against in GPPs, namely Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. The tricky part with these guys, like they're great fantasy players, but they're really difficult to stack up with their receivers. I mean, Mark Andrews had a good game last week, um, but like pegging down like receiving production for Lamar Jackson is really difficult because he just runs the ball a lot more than throws it. So I think you can get an advantage just by going to offenses that pass the ball a lot and have some guys that are a little bit more viable in fantasy, not relying on the quarterback rushing as much because that doesn't help you with your other 8 spots in your lineup.
Especially for these GPPs, right, where correlation is so important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lamar Jackson was my cash quarterback last week, and that worked out pretty nice. But once you start digging into guys like Marquise Brown, Willie Snead, like your lineup's looking pretty bad once you try to stack them up.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's get into some of these games here. We have the marquee game first. The Baltimore Ravens traveling to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. The Chiefs line, that line has been moving around. I think it currently sits somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 6.5. So the Chiefs as favorites. Two very different defenses here. The Kansas City Chiefs defense, a lot worse than the Baltimore Ravens defense. However, it's possible that the Baltimore Ravens have been padded a little bit by their two weak opponents. We had them taking on the Miami Dolphins in week one. And then, of course, we had the paced up Cliff Kingsbury Arizona Cardinals offense last week. So, what are your general thoughts on the Baltimore Ravens offense heading into Kansas City? I know you're a big fan of playing offenses against Kansas City if possible, just because they score so quickly, and that means a lot more time of possession for the opposing offense.
Yeah, I think that is true, but the problem with Baltimore is there just aren't like those fantasy producers that you really want to see, other than Lamar Jackson. Uh, Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown both are kind of on the fringe of my thoughts here, but Baltimore only has a team total of 22, so the bookmakers are really thinking they're at a big disadvantage in this game, and it's going to be hard picking the right pieces here. Like Mark Ingram, he doesn't get a lot of passing work, so you're just relying on rushing. But he's also splitting it with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. You got Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. Like I think they're both like decent targets, but the problem is with Marquise Brown, he just doesn't get enough catches that kind of eliminates some of the PPR potential. Mark Andrews, he's not on the field the whole game. He's crazy good when he is, but these guys aren't really as valuable as their price tags on Yahoo today or on Yahoo Sunday. So I'm not ending up with like many game stacks here.
So we have, Lamar Jackson priced up $36, and surprisingly, Pat Mahomes not the most expensive quarterback on this slate. Surprisingly, though, as well, Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown getting a fairly concentrated target share. Does that matter to you at all? We have 18 targets from Mark Andrews, 17 from Marquise Brown, and then the next closest person in that Baltimore Ravens offense has 5 targets. So it's a little bit surprising to see those two so far distanced when I totally agree with your point and your assessment in that it's really hard to predict, or at least I have the perception that it's really hard to predict where Lamar Jackson is going to throw the ball in this offense.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the routes, it tells a little bit different story. Like Marquise Brown, he's run just a few more routes than Willie Snead. Mark Andrews is the same. Miles Boykin and Willie Snead and Seth Roberts all are on the field a good amount. They haven't gotten a ton of targets yet. Only 9 between the three of them. But the thing with football is these teams still want you to know where they're going every play, so that they will have to mix this up. And also, the snap counts aren't that high for any particular player. They have quite the rotation going at tight end with Nick Boyle and with Hayden Hurst, or Mark Andrews, and then at wide receiver as well. They have 4 guys that are all getting good playing time.
Another one of the issues with rostering, like Marquise Brown is priced up. He's $24 on Yahoo, and that seems a little bit crazy to me. So I'm off him. I'd rather go to someone like Adam Thielen for $24, and I think that will probably lower his ownership. These Baltimore players are just a little too pricey on Yahoo. Hey.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, I mean, Patrick Mahomes averages like 100 yards per game more than Lamar Jackson throwing. But Kelsey and Watkins are only like a little bit more expensive than Brown and Andrews. So I think it's clear that these Baltimore receivers aren't very good values this week.
All right, well, let's switch over to the Kansas City Chiefs side of this game. We have Pat Mahomes at $38. We have Sammy Watkins, $25. We have Travis Kelce, $28. If you're stacking up Mahomes, I'm assuming is he your highest projected quarterback this week? And if so, which of those guys are you stacking him up with?
Actually, I don't think he is. I mean, just verify this, but this isn't a good matchup for him. Baltimore is significantly more difficult than other defenses, and their team total is 29. That's lower than some other team totals on the slate. He doesn't run the ball a ton. I actually have 2 quarterbacks projected above him. So I don't think he's going to be my top option, but there are advantages to Mahomes as well. That the targets are pretty predictable between Kelsey and Watkins being some workhorses with Tyreek Hill out. So they make nice plays, but if all the hype is going to be on this game, I think that the guys are just priced up enough that it's probably not worth it.
Do you have any interest in this running game, this Chiefs running game? Damian Williams, a little bit banged up. Shady McCoy, a little bit banged up. Both are not too terribly priced. Damian Williams, $21. Sean McCoy, possibly a bargain at $14. Any interest?
No, not really. I think that it's again not a great matchup, and $21 seems about right for Damian Williams on the average week. He's been getting about half the workload in running, a little bit more than half in the passing game. So I mean, a pretty decent workload, but 21. I think you can probably find some other guys around that price that just have bigger roles on the team.
That makes sense. All right, should we move on to another game here? How about or actually, just one more question for you. With this game being the highest total, 52, do you are you stacking it at all, or are you worried about these prices?
I don't chagrin anyone that would sack this game, but it doesn't look very appealing to me. I mean, you got two quarterbacks that are the second and fourth highest priced players the third and sixth highest priced players on the slate. Usually quarterbacks, I mean, you can find some guys that aren't on great teams that can produce. So I think that you're just not getting a lot of bang for your buck here.
All right, I like it. Let's move on to the next game here. We got the Rams heading to Cleveland. Yes, heading to Cleveland. 48 total. This line's been moving a little bit. The Rams were initially favored by 3. I think that's down to about 1.5. You got any general thoughts on this game, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland, they went out and had a pretty good game last week on prime time, so I think people are really excited about Odell Beckham. The prices are pretty high, I see. The Rams aren't a great matchup. I mean, that's a pretty strong offense, so it should be a good game. But as far as one of the teams having a great matchup, I don't see it as much. Ty Gurley looks like he might be a good value at 24. Cup at 20 seems decent. I guess the Rams receivers are all relatively cheap here, so I do like that.
So on the Cleveland side of the ball, we have Odell Beckham Jr. leading the team with 20 targets, Jarvis Landry 14, and then we have David Njoku, who's going to be out. Do you like any of these pass catchers from Baker Mayfield at their price points?
I think that Njoku being out is a bonus to Odell Beckham. The backup tight end, Demetrius Harris, really isn't a great pass catcher, so that should just mean more targets to go around for their receivers. And OBJ has really been the big target here. The counterpoint is he's 31. That's pretty darn expensive for a team that isn't projected to put up that many points. Only 22 for Cleveland this week projected. And that'll make him a little bit tough to get to because it will just be hard for this Browns team to score touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same line with you. Like, that seems like Baker didn't look that great last week, and then you have Odell Beckham Jr. priced up here, so it's kind of a tough one because if this game total isn't that, if the Browns team total isn't that high, this might you might be better off fading here. It's kind of tough to imagine many targets going outside of those two, but maybe we'll get into the tight ends a little bit later. What about this Rams passing offense here? You mentioned that these receivers are cheap. We have Cooper Kupp at $20, Brandon Cooks at $19, Robert Woods at $17. Is there anyone, do you prefer possibly some of these slot receivers avoiding a matchup with Denzel Ward, possibly Woods or Kupp, or do you have a preference in any of these? Is price the deciding factor?
I think that these guys all kind of have they have the similar volume of being on the field, and who they go to every week seems to just be random from my observations. So I guess the matchups are worth considering, but Woods being the cheapest at 17 seems like the most appealing to me. Cup and Cooks also seem relatively reasonably priced, so I think that if you want to do a game stack here with Goff, that could be a good option.
Now, last week we had Todd Gurley was one of your favorite plays of the week. We have him priced up a little bit. What was he, $18 or something last week,
Yeah,
Alex?
he was super cheap.
That was nuts. So he's been priced up a little bit. The usage is still there, but as you said, like the sort of timeshare that we've been seeing with Malcolm Brown is built into the price. Now we have him at $24. He's a fairly decent value, projected for 14.79 points. Are you going to get to much Gurley this week?
I don't like him nearly as much as I did last week because of that 50% price increase, but it will come down to the ownership here for me. I think that Gurley is a great talent. His workload is a little bit lower this week, but if he's going to be projected low in our ownership projections, then I think he could be a good GPP play, but I probably won't go to him in cash.
All right, all right. Flip side, the Cleveland Browns run game got a little Nick Chubb action. Not predicted for actually more points than Gurley, but he is priced up at $31. Too expensive, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's not the greatest fantasy player because he doesn't get a lot of receiving work, and that limits his production. So I think that 31 is just that's too expensive for his role on the team.
Especially with Aaron Donald clogging up that middle. Yeah, this game, it's funny with the it's got the third highest implied total on the slate, 48 points. I'm just not getting to it too much, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because it's because of the reasons you outlined there, where Odell Beckham Jr. is just priced up, and then of course these it's really hard to get excited about these Rams receiver because they spread the ball around between the three of them so much. So maybe more for cash games than GPPs. I don't know, but I'm liking a lot of these other games that we're going to get into right now. Let's start off with the Chargers and Texans. Surprisingly, the third highest total on the slate. One of my favorite plays of the week is Will Fuller, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. What are your general thoughts on this game, Alex?
Just one more thought on this last game is that it is the Sunday night game, so it's Yahoo only. So people might not pick these guys just because there isn't a lot of hype about this game in the industry. So that could be a reason to go there. I think so. Houston Chargers. I think the Chargers last week. I like that they lost to the Detroit Lions. That was a nice victory for my Detroit team there. And maybe some of these guys will go a little bit under the radar because they haven't been that great so far. But Austin Eckler certainly won't. He's been lighting it up, just getting the workload we hoped for with Melvin Gordon out. And Hunter Henry is out for a few weeks, and I think that makes Keenan Allen a great play as well because there's just more targets to go around. Their backup tight ends don't really do much on the field, but he is pretty expensive at $30, so that will limit my interest to some extent.
Yeah, $30 is a price up. He was one of the better bargains on the slate last week. I think he was $24. So now we're getting him priced up against this Houston team that's been pretty weak against the pass. They're a bit of a funnel, tend to be great against the run, poor against the pass. So Keenan Allen, $30. Does Mike Williams at $18, which with a huge height advantage over these Texans corners, does that interest you at all? Is he? Are you worried a little bit about the fact that he was banged up last week? It looked like he was almost a full go or close to it.
Yeah, I think I didn't see anything in the snap counts that was particularly surprising, so I think he's fine. $18 is a little bit high for the kind of guy he's shown himself to be over the last season. He's only been averaging 7 points per game this season, which isn't that good. So I don't see a ton of reason to go out of my way for him, but if I'm stacking up Rivers, then I certainly think he's an option.
All right, I like it. So stacking those two up, that seems like a pretty concentrated offense. On the flip side of things, we got Deshaun Watson at $37. We have got DeAndre Hopkins at $37, one of the more expensive stacks on this slate, wide receiver quarterback combo. Then you got Will Fuller sitting there at $18. I tweeted out something a little earlier this week that kind of took off. Will Fuller, Chargers cornerback Brendan Fashion this year has allowed 10 receptions on 12 targets, 126 yards and a TD. He also runs a 4.5 or 4.5 40-yard dash up against Will Fuller, who's one of the faster guys in the NFL, runs a 4.3 40, leads the NFL in targeted air yards. Are you buying into my Will Fuller hype, Alex?
And I'd like to say yes, but I'm not as convinced. I think that, well, one of the problems is that Hopkins gets targeted so much, and Houston doesn't throw the ball as much as other teams. They're at about 45% rate of running the ball. The average in the league is about 40%. So it's just less pass plays to go around, and Hopkins is such a ball hog, as well as, I mean, they got Duke Johnson. He's a passing game first running back. He's getting a lot of the workload with Carlos Hyde. So I think there's just too many mouths to feed. Kiki Kuti, he's been playing. They're doing more 3 wide receiver sets with either Kuti or Stills. And I think that you're not going to see as good production from Hopkins or Fuller as long as that's going to be happening.
All right, I'm in line with you, and I think that although I think Will Fuller's a great kind of like low-owned GPP flyer if the ownership doesn't get there. However, it sounds like there's some buzz building up, so
yeah, I mean,
we'll have to see about that one.
You're generating the buzz here, man. Like,
right, I'm a trendsetter.
I see what you're doing here, like telling people you're not on it now. Maybe like you drive the ownership.
Yeah. You don't want to play Will Fuller. This offense is too concentrated on Hopkins. I'm assuming that Austin Eckler is one of your favorite plays this week.
Yeah, he's my favorite running back. I think that he's just an amazing receiver out of the backfield. He has been getting the rushing attempts as well over Justin Jackson. And as long as he's getting that kind of workhorse back status, then he's going to be a top running back because of that PPR value. I guess it's 0.5 PPR in Yahoo, but still very good. And he's only 25. That's 2/3 of the price of the top end guys. So I think there's some good value there.
Yeah, great value there. I'm on board as well. So it definitely seems like Eckler for cash lineups, anyways, is probably a pretty good place to start. Do you have any interest in? I guess the tight ends here are not really in play. So maybe we can move on to the next game. Got any final thoughts? Any takeaways from this one?
I think that all these games of the week we're talking about are some of the higher priced ones. I mean, I see the quarterbacks here, Watson at 37, Rivers at 36. I mean, 36 is an absurd price for Phillip Rivers because he just doesn't run at all. And you're getting only passing with him. So he's way overpriced. Watson also overpriced. So I'd say these games of the week are probably not the games of the week for me on Yahoo.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Usually what you have in some of these higher total games is you get a few bargains along the way, and that makes them appealing to stack. I think what we're seeing this week is a lot of these games are priced appropriately or priced high, so we're going to have to find value elsewhere. Before we get into the next one, do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about what we have over at Awesemo.com this year and why they should subscribe to your industry-leading projections?
Thanks, man. Yeah. Well, basically, like the reason we started Awesemo.com is because it takes a lot of time to develop projections that are competitive, and I use mine at the highest levels of daily fantasy every single day. So I think you're at a disadvantage if you're using any other sorts of projections. You can save a ton of time off your plate. Really know your process to the more fun part of daily fantasy to me, which is figuring out who the sneaky plays are, and you can do that with our ownership projections, our top stacks, and I think these tools will both make your process quicker and make you win more money on average.
I like it. Yeah, it's been a huge boon. Honestly, if you want to win at DFS, you need to get projections like these. They're the best in the industry. We also have deals right now where we have a $3.95 per week to get some access to your rankings as well for if you're just new to DFS and you want to try it out. So make sure to check those out and come on by. You can go to www.awesemo.com/join and find out about all of our packages there. Let's move into our fourth game of this slate. The New York Giants plus 6.5 at Tampa Bay. This is a game I'm kind of into. What about yourself, Alex?
Oh yeah, man, definitely. I mean, I'm seeing like this is like the opposite of every game that we talked to this point. I mean, the
Yup.
over under is 48, but Jameis Winston's 23. That's like 2/3 the price of Philip Rivers. Daniel Jones, the rookie, $20 bare minimum for quarterbacks on Yahoo. I mean, I don't know exactly what to make of him. He's probably not gonna be the greatest player in the world, but he's only $20, so I might take some stabs with him. Try to get there before the hype.
Well, that's an interesting take because I think that most people who are going to stack this game are going to start their lineups with Jameis Winston and not stack up Daniel Jones. I don't know. Maybe New Yorkers are high on him and they're gonna shift it because they want to get him and there's that kind of that novelty, right? But the real obvious stack in this one is going to be Godwin and Evans. $22 for Godwin,
Yeah.
$20 for Evans,
Wow.
Jameis Winston. How do you not start your lineups with those three? Like those, that is such a huge bargain.
Yeah, I mean that is insane. Like this stack is about like 2/3 the price of the Rams stack, and I mean you got Mike Evans at $20. This guy, although he has averaged 5.9 fantasy points per game this season, I mean he has a long track record of being an excellent player. Not the greatest in the world, but the Bucs they pass it a ton. They've actually been running it more this year to this point, but still, I think that Winston is a huge bargain here.
Yes, yes, he is. Now, are you going to get a little bit contrarian? Like, let's say you build a GPP lineup with Godwin, Evans, and Winston. I'm assuming that's going to be pretty popular. Will you have any OJ Howard shares? Will you try and get contrarian by adding like a Brashad Perriman or someone else in this offense? How will you approach just I think we both expect would be a very, very chalky situation?
Yeah, I think that OJ Howard is 18. That is a higher price for a tight end, and he hasn't really justified his price to this point, so that would be kind of a dart throw. I do like the idea of only taking one of Godwin and Evans because so many people might have both. I do like Brashad Perriman. He's only $10, so that's some significant salary relief. And former number one pick. He played with terrible quarterbacks for the first years of his career, and now he's with a okay quarterback, Jameis Winston, and that should make him a way better player than he has been in the past.
So yeah, this New York Giants defense has been terrible, especially their secondary. Janoris Jenkins, DeAndre Baker ranking last in the entire NFL in yards per snap. Janoris Jenkins hasn't been much better. So there's advantages all over the board here. I like what you had to say about Perriman because at that price point, he's probably not going to carry much ownership simply because he hasn't done much this year. But you're going to have to find ways to differentiate because the Godwin, Evans, Winston stack is going to be very popular. If you're game stacking this, one of the things I know that you really like to do is to bring it back with one of the other players in the team. Who are you looking at this week? Because we got Saquon Barkley in what may be a tough matchup. It looks like the Tampa Bay run defense is much improved this year. They rank near the top of the league, I think first or second in run DVOA thus far. Are you at all inclined to play him with his work in the passing game, or will you pivot over to someone like an Evan Ingram or one of these random wide receivers on the Giants side?
Yeah, I think that Barkley and Ingram are the obvious choices. Barkley, I mean, I don't want to get carried away and say the Bucs are a great defense after being, terrible for like a whole year last year. I mean, maybe they got some different players this year, but like that's pretty hard to believe. The Giants team total of 22 is pretty high for first game starting quarterback in Daniel Jones, so that's encouraging. Evan Ingram, I think, is he's been getting a lot of work this year, and he's averaged 15 fantasy points per game so far. With Golden Tate still suspended, I think that he should get a lot of targets. And then the contrarian play would be Sterling Shepard. He's priced up a little bit too high for my taste at 17 because he's a good player but not a great one. It's probably a fair price, so it's not really standing out. But because so many people will probably have Barkley and Ingram, I think that he could be sneaky.
All right, I like it. A little sneaky possible game stack option for Tampa Bay Giants. Before we move on to the next game, any final thoughts for this one?
I think this will probably be the most popular game. It's just like the best priced, and there's a lot of hype because Daniel Jones is starting. So I'm not going to get carried away and tell you that you're going to win a bunch of money on this game because so many other people are doing it. But it will be part of my portfolio for sure.
Yeah, it's so hard to get off of it. Absolutely. All right, let's move on to our final of our five highest totaled games this week. This is an interesting one right here. We have the Cowboys implied for what, 48 points at home to the Miami Dolphins. If you're in a survivor pool, you are probably taking the Dallas Cowboys. I know Ben, Jordan, and I were all on the Dallas Cowboys in the betting show. General thoughts on this one, Alex?
Yeah, I see this over under 47, so that means Dallas should score 47 on average, right?
47 nothing seems like a safe bet.
I think that I mean it's hard to not project these guys to go bananas. Ezekiel Elliott 33 is pretty reasonably priced. The thing is, what I would expect to see here is that Dallas will put up 20 to 30 points, and then they'll slam on the brakes and run the air out of the ball if they have any like two score lead or above. And in that instance, I'd expect to see Tony Pollard get a lot of the carries. So I think that I really don't want to target competitive games for game stacks, so I probably wouldn't target this game for a stack. But the individual players that will get them to those 30 points, like Elliott, Cooper, sorry, the way I said that, it sounded like one guy, but
Elliot Hooper.
Elliott Hooper,
Hooper running back tight end.
Yeah. So I think taking some one-offs from the game is a good idea, but I'm a little bit hesitant to give a full endorsement for just loading up on this game. What do you think?
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. And I've heard you express your reservations in the past about loading up on these games. It's kind of tough because Dallas is going to score a lot of points, but you also don't know if some of those points are going to come in garbage time when they're already up, and that's going to limit some of the playing time. And the flip side of that argument is if you're up by 30 and you're benching your guys in the fourth quarter, well, you probably already scored a lot of points to begin with. So it's kind of a tough call. Ezekiel Elliott, $33 though. That seems like a pretty reasonable price for him.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good price. He hasn't been getting quite the workload like we'd like as fantasy owners, but it's the world's best matchup, so he should get a good amount of points.
And his snap count is on the upper trajectory. We saw in the first week they limited him, and then I think he was up to about a 60% snap count share last week. So you're probably going to see that rise in the coming weeks, I'm guessing.
I mean, I'm not as convinced, I guess, because like in previous years they hadn't been giving the backups any work essentially, but Tony Pollard has been getting some serious responsibilities on the team, so I'm not expecting Ezekiel Elliott to have, like 75% of the rushing yards on the team like he has in the past. He's still a great player, though.
So there you have it. A Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott double stack.
There we go.
What about this Dallas passing game? So we have Michael Gallup out. We have Amari Cooper, maybe in a little bit of a tough matchup, but he's graded out really well against Xavier Howard. And then we have Randall Cobb running in the slot. Yeah, Devin Smith, $15. Randall Cobb, $15. Do you have any interest in this Dallas receiving game? Is it just kind of the same thing you were saying before, where it's so tough to stack such a big favorite?
Yeah, I think it is. Gallup being out does make some guys interesting. Devin Smith was kind of the play of last week. He just went out and had a crazy outlier performance, so that might be a guy I'd avoid because he's $15 and he's probably a $10 player. Randall Cobb also just hasn't been getting a ton of work to justify $15. So Cooper would be the guy I go to. I mean, he's expensive, but he could easily get a couple touchdowns on route to them building up that lead of 22.5 points.
I like it. So if you were super high on these Dallas guys, and you wanted to bring it back with someone on Miami. We have Josh Rosen starting. Is there anyone you like here? Is Kenyon Drake at $11 the most appealing option?
Yes, I think he is. I think Drake, he hasn't been productive this far because they haven't played in any competitive games, but he does get passes and he runs the ball, so there's definitely potential if Miami can put up some points behind Josh Rosen that he would get there. Besides that, I think Devontae Parker, Albert Wilson being out or doubtful, that elevates Parker to be the number one receiver. And he's not a great one, but he's good enough for $10.
All right, I like it. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think this game is like these are some of the biggest spreads we've seen in the NFL in years, like with this game and the Patriots versus Jets game, and those probably won't be the ones I'm super excited about.
Makes sense. Yeah, the first time since 1987 we've had two games in the same week over 21 points, I think, or 20 points. So
Wow.
just absolutely crazy. Going to be a nuts year for survivor pools. I'm waiting to see signs of life before I get too carried away with stacking the Dolphins. It's not
Uh,
looking good right now. Yeah, just a quick word before we start building these cash lineups and GPP lineups for Yahoo. On the contrary, tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 Pacific, we have Mike Taglieri coming on from Fantasy Pros to discuss the slate. It is must watch, my favorite show of the entire week, where you kind of go over with Chris Bags all of the important information that everyone needs to know. So make sure to check that out tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern. And then before that, if you're looking for a little more content, we also have the NFL Strategy Show. That is at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. All right, time to build lineup.
soon.
I like it. So we going cash here?
Yeah, let's build a cash one and then a tournament one.
Cool. So loading up your projections. Is there any players we didn't really touch on in those games that are standing out to you?
Um,
I guess we can go into it
in
a little
different
bit here as we
games,
go
I
through.
mean, so I think the obvious way to start off your cash game roster is probably with Winston. I mean, he's just like he's got a great matchup versus the Giants, and he's $23. He's a guy that has significant value as a quarterback, running the ball and passing it. So that would be my cash play.
Yeah, fire up James Winston. You're not going to get a better deal than that. $3 above the bare minimum. I don't see any way around it if you're playing the
Yeah,
cash.
I mean to put it in context, he's the same price as Mason Rudolph this week.
Yeah, that's nuts. What about a pivot? Maybe Kyler Murray. Would that be your pivot if you didn't go for Jameis?
My pivot would be Daniel Jones, or if I want to spend up, maybe Dak. But
Yep.
Daniel Jones, he's $20. This is a guy I'm expecting to run the ball a good amount, way more than Eli Manning for sure. And he's got some decent targets in Barkley, Ingram, and Shepard, so he could get it done.
Awesome. Okay, we got Winston in there. Time to fire off a little. Yeah, I'm just looking up Daniel Jones' rushing stats. You're right there. That might not be a bad one. 500, 400, 500. Not bad rushing stats there. So maybe he'll fly under a little bit under the radar there.
Yeah, I don't want to go overboard and say he's going to be sneaky because there's so much hype around him being the Giants' future quarterback. But he is very well priced this week for the kind of player he'll be.
All right. What about are you feeling confident in Rex Burkhead or Chris Thompson?
No, I mean like for cash, probably not. But for GPPs, I mean New England's gonna run a million times, so Burkhead is kind of interesting. Thompson, because Darius Geis is out, has been getting some good work. But if you need some salary relief in a GPP, I'd go there. But not probably the greatest cash plays.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just kind of it's a little too risky, I'm guessing. Hey.
Yeah.
So we're not seeing like a ton of great value for running backs here so far, right?
Yeah, I think that Too bad Fournette's not on this slate. He was $18 again this week.
Well, that's a 70-yard run at the end, kind of bailed him out there. But
Yeah, I think
so, what about Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams? We got the Packers at 7.5 point favorites. Do you like Aaron Jones? Are you seeing a timeshare develop there, or is that just because of the fact that you have both of those guys right next to each other a little bit concerning?
I mean, a cash play could be taking both of them. I mean, the coach
Yeah,
said that there's going to be an even split, but I'm more skeptical because Aaron Jones got way more work last week than Jamal Williams. So it's not like a light bulb just suddenly turned on and he's like, Aaron Jones now will get 50%.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but I think my cash play would probably be Eckler. He's
Yeah,
just underpriced given his production so far this year. I mean, he's been averaging 28 points a game.
yeah, that makes sense at that price point. We talked about him a little earlier. We're going to another running back here. Philip Lindsay, possibly in a positive game script. Denver passing a little bit. Hasn't done much this year though.
Yeah, he's cheap. I mean, $15 for Lindsey. That's pretty good.
What about the news that Frank Gore's been eliminated or eliminated? Devin Singletary's been ruled out for the game. Any interest in Frank Gore, especially in the half point PPR, because we know Frank Gore doesn't catch a lot of passes. We got Buffalo as 6 point home favorites. Frank Gore $15.
Man, that is kind of interesting. I don't have the Singletary news baked into my projections yet. I'll do that after the show. But man, it's the problem is Josh Allen runs the ball so much that. And then I expect TJ Yeldon to go in and get the passing down, so I'm not like super keen on it at this point. Um,
What about going back to Gurley here at $24?
yeah, let's see who the highest projected guys are.
All
So
right.
we got Elliott. I mean, Elliott seems like a nice cash play because low variance Dallas versus Miami. That could be a nice one.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Let's do it. Fire it up.
Cool. All right, and then wide out. Um, we were talking about the Tampa guys as being pretty underpriced.
Yep.
So who are you thinking this week for cash wide?
It's a really good question because it feels like people are going to be on Godwin with the recency bias, but Mike Evans is still the bigger name. So I'm guessing that I know you've said in the past as well that you don't like to worry too much about stacks one way or the other. Would you though not stack two wide receivers in a game, or would you not even worry about that with your quarterback?
It's tough to really say. I mean, like it depends who you're playing to some extent because if you're playing a good player, they probably will have Jameis Winston and one of these receivers as well. So then it's really a 1v1, Chris Godwin versus another team, and
Yep.
stacking isn't even relevant. So if you're playing against someone that's not that good, though, it might be a little bit too high variance to have them both. Um, so it's a little bit speculative based on who you're playing.
Right. I'm happy with either one of them. If you got to lean one or the other, maybe take the $2 savings on Evans, but
Yeah.
it's pretty tough to tell. I think more people will be on Godwin at the end of the day, but
Yeah, I think Evans, being the cheaper player and the one with the longer track record, that's who I would prefer.
beautiful. So I'm guessing also like you probably avoid Amari Cooper in this shootout. Julio Jones priced up a little bit, still good. Devontae Adams $30 is appealing, though it sounds like the Broncos have moved Chris Harris Jr. to the outside a little bit, so it's a little bit of a tougher matchup than we perhaps initially envisioned. We might see a bit of a shadow on Adams this week, but still favorites, still 7.5 points, 7.5 point favorites over the Broncos. So, what do we got left per player here?
We
19
got
bucks.
19. I guess one guy that's standing out to me as an outlier is Tyrell Williams at 16. I mean, he's the number one receiver for Oakland in a
Yep.
spot where they should have to pass the ball a lot. And he's averaged 16 points a game this year, so 16 seems a little bit cheap. What do you think about that?
I like it. Yeah, and all it takes is one, right? I think he was top 5 in the NFL in A dot last year. So if a noodle arm car can just get him one deep threat, he's gonna see an increase in targets with no one to throw the ball there too. So and you're right, their game script says that they're probably gonna have to throw. So yeah, seems like a great play.
Nice. All right. Who else? Who do you think we should get in here? I think we can get an expensive wide receiver since we went cheap with the two. So
What
far.
about I'm digging Keenan Allen. I think Scott Barrett from PFF wrote an article about how expected points for, and Keenan Allen was leading the league. So that's always a good stat to go by if you need a tiebreaker.
Nice. I like it. And with Hunter Henry out, I think Keenan Allen should be getting elite volume.
Nice. Should we fire in a defense here and before we get?
Sure. Let's do it. So I'm expecting. It looks like Dallas is 25. That is pretty silly expensive. Let's see.
Patriots against Luke Falk.
That's pretty appealing, but it is above our salary remaining. Maybe we can find a cheap team.
GP. So
Uh,
Arizona Cardinals possibly against Kyle Allen.
oh wow, yeah, that's super cheap. I think that's pretty good. Yeah,
At least there'll be a lot of it's the two high-paced teams. There's going to be a lot of chances at least. I'm guessing the score will be high, the game total's high, but it's about 44.5. But that doesn't mean we can't see some turnovers or some sacks, especially with a rookie or not rookie, but a sophomore, I think, quarterback starting his first game of the season. So
Yep.
if Cam Newton can't go, and if Cam Newton can go, well, that's even better.
All right, sounds good. And then tight end. Let's see. Kelsey actually he is. I mean, Kansas City is not in the optimal matchup this week, so maybe we spend down a little bit.
I feel like Ertz is probably the play here. No, like it's
Yeah.
pretty safe. Like the Eagles are gonna have to throw to him. Seems to be the best value on the slate too for you.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I haven't projected higher than Kelsey because he's got that matchup versus Detroit. So
Yep.
I like it. And then
All right, we got one flex spot left. Oof, it's kind of ugly down here.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Aaron Jones. That could be an option, but I guess the narrative is that maybe his workload will decrease.
Yep.
Of course, if you're building these lineups at home, an easy way to do it is just pull my projections and sort by the highest value players. And
Yeah. And of course, we also have the Fantasy Cruncher option as well. We have Awesemo's projections just put right into Fantasy Cruncher anymore, so you don't even have to do anything. You just go over to the site and it's ready to roll.
nice. So it looks
George
like
Kittle?
yeah, George Kittle or Aaron Jones. Either of those guys seem like the best options at this price point.
Well, I'm always. Looks like you're clicking. Looks like you're clicking Kittle there. So let's do it.
All right. So.
All right, there's your cash game lineup.
Yeah, I like it.
On to GPPs. We got about 5 minutes left to build a GPP
All
here.
right, we gotta hustle.
We're gonna have to go quicker. Now, are you worried about the Winston ownership? Would you game stack here, or are you gonna pivot off to someone else?
I think that he'll be very high owned, so I like going to someone else. I think that I wonder if Arizona could be kind of like a sneakier play this week because I mean their team total is way lower, but they play at such a high pace, and Carolina does as well. That could be.
Oh, you are speaking my language. Both
All
those
right.
teams are averaging 22 points per game or 22 seconds per play.
Yeah.
Super cheap wide receivers all over the board here. So
All right.
I'm all about the Kyler Murray.
All right, who should we stack up with them?
So one guy that's sort of getting some buzz in deeper circles is Damari Bird.
Okay.
He had like a 96% snap share. The Arizona Cardinals are running four wide receiver sets about 95% of the time right now. He's just $10. Big fan of him. He's really short but fast, and he has he ran a 4.28 40 on grass. So one of the faster players in the league. Could get behind the defense. I kind of like him as a sneaky play in GPPs.
Nice.
I don't know how you feel about him though.
I mean, he's definitely a sneaky play. So that's a good GPP flyer. Keyshawn Johnson also probably would go under the radar a lot because Christian Kirk and Fitzgerald are the 1 and 2. So maybe we pick one of those two guys, and we have a mix of the chalk and the sleepers.
Yeah, absolutely. So my personal preference is Larry Fitzgerald. But if you haven't projected one, I haven't seen your projections here. If you got one projected higher, let's go with yours, obviously. Larry Fitzgerald as well is another one of those expected points for guys that is kind of having a resurgent season, and he seems to be Kyler Murray's favorite target at this point. Do you have a takeaway from those two?
Yeah, it's crazy because like I was expecting Fitzgerald to like take another step backwards this year, but he's been insane.
Yeah.
I do think Christian Kirk, the up and coming player, will overtake him at some point, but we haven't seen it yet. I think Kirk will be the more contrarian play.
And it looks like your projections have Fitzgerald a little bit better as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's amazing what a difference a coaching staff can make. Hey, going from the slowest pace, worst scheme offense to one of the most creative in the league. So yeah. I like that. Would you then bring this back with Christian McCaffrey?
I think we got to. I mean, like, if this game stat goes off, then it's hard to see Christian McCaffrey not having an amazing game.
Yeah. What would you go further than that? Are you gonna add in any DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, or are you a little bit worried about the Kyle Allen quarterbacking Cam Newton situation?
I think we could. I don't have anything against it, but they probably aren't the best values this week because of Kyle Allen being probably the starter. So let's move on to some one-offs here, I guess.
That McCaffrey just took our budget all the way down to $21.
We spent it all. Like I'm surprised he's so expensive after this last game he was in, man, being such a dud.
It's terrible. Yeah. Do you want to go back to Eckler? Yes. That price point?
That's a good idea. And then we need one more wide out.
Are you buying into any of these Philadelphia Eagles receivers now that it looks like Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson are out? Aguilar, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Matt Collins.
Yeah. Let me see who I got here. They're definitely on my mind, like Arcega-Whiteside and Aguilar, but Aguilar, man, I just feel like they're getting so much hype. Like I'd be more inclined to go with Ertz, I guess, but
there's always Devin Smith on Dallas as well. But he seems a little bit priced up on Yahoo, $14, $15.
We could go with Mike Evans. He's gonna be the chalk.
Let's do it. Mike Evans, $20. It's too cheap.
All right, awesome. And then
Zach Ertz.
Yeah, he's the obvious play there. So let's go for defense now. I don't think we can go with the Arizona defense again, so we gotta come up with a different one this time.
Counterintuitive. What about the Chargers, D? Do you like them at all? Chargers, Houston's offensive line hasn't been so great this year. It seemed to be allowing a lot of pressure on Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think Watson has been known to throw some picks, so that could work out. This is definitely a more contrarian play because Houston is actually projected to do decent this year, this game. But that's what we're trying to do is come up with some plays that will make our lineup stand out. Nice.
All right, we got a little bit of money left. We could add David Johnson into our crazy little stack here.
Yeah.
We could.
I'm going to rule out Antonio Brown. I mean, he's only on the field like half the time, so I don't know how he's $26. That's insane.
That is pretty nuts.
Watkins. I mean, he wasn't very great last week, so maybe people will be looking elsewhere.
Absolutely, pretty concentrated target share right now between him and Kelsey, so that's going to fly under the radar as people opt to go shy away from him for other options in that offense just based on the fact they had a bad week. So, all right.
Sounds good, man. Well, me and Nolan are accepting tips if you use this lineup and win all the money in the ball.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. We will be back tomorrow with 2 football shows, as I mentioned, on the contrary at 11 Eastern with Chris Spags and Mike Taglieri, as well as Awesemo. And we have loads of stuff coming up this afternoon as well. We've got the deeper dive with Adam and Lofty. We've got live before lock with Josh and Jake. So make sure to tune in. We've also got the betting show on our Awesemo YouTube site if you want to get in some bets for this weekend's action with Ben Rasa, Jordan Frank, and myself. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you back here at the exact same time next week.